9 years ago, the World Values Network created the Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala to celebrate and honor the work of prominent individuals from all walks of life who advance universal values, who courageously fight for equality, and who are adamant defenders of human rights and social justice. Our platform recognizes and applauds their efforts to promote positive ideals for the betterment of humanity. Previous honorees include Nobel Peace Laureate Elie Wiesel, Academy Award winner Sir Ben Kingsley, Senator Robert Menendez, Olympian and media personality Caitlyn Jenner, Governor Chris Christie, Academy Award winner Sean Penn, activist and actress Pamela Anderson, Senator Cory Booker, Secretary of the Treasury Steve Mnuchin, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu receiving a posthumous award on behalf of the hero of Antibes, his brother Yoni, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, Dr. Mehmet Oz, philanthropists Dr. Miriam and Sheldon Adelson, and philanthropists Judy and Michael Steinhardt, to name but a few. This year's 9th annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala is held in honor of Black History Month, highlighting African American and Jewish brotherhood, friendship, and kinship, focusing on communal and family identity, highlighting the importance of global solidarity and the unique value system we share as a global community. Tonight's key theme will be that of social cohesion and solidarity, with an emphasis on strengthening the bonds between us. We're calling for members of both communities the important historical ties we have shared, as well as the continued benefit of cooperation and solidarity moving forward. The African American and Jewish communities are united not by a shared history of suffering or persecution, but a shared vision of redemption and spiritual promise. This year, the Champion of Music and Youth Empowerment Award will be given to Miss Dionne Warwick, a living legend, entertainer, and activist. We will also be honoring actor and comedian Mr. Steve Harvey with the Champion of Education Award for the vital programs Mr. Harvey has developed through the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation, astonishingly reaching over 6 million households, providing the youth with the guidance and direction necessary for creating sustainable futures. Additionally, this year we will be presenting Mr. Robert L. Green with the Champion of Inclusion and Diversity Award for his important contributions towards these thematic areas through his role as President and CEO of the National Association of Investment Companies, the industry association representing diverse-owned private equity firms and hedge funds. And of course, we recognize the global philanthropic efforts of Gala co-host Robert Smith, who has emerged as one of America's great lights investing in education, family, and communal identity. To all our friends, families, and supporters who help and encourage us in our vital mission, we thank you. You are our partners in imparting universal ethics and values and promoting love and togetherness between all of God's children. Together, through our joint narrative as African American and Jewish brothers and sisters, joined by people of every ethnicity and faith, we can become, together, a light unto the nations and make the world a more luminous place with compassion, empathy, and understanding. Please support our program tonight as we ask for you to join our global efforts while we continue to spread the light of universal values, in particular the struggle for justice, equality, and dignity for all of the Earth's inhabitants. We offer our thanks to all who have joined us this evening, providing us with your good support, in addition to allotting us the opportunity to continue our vital work in the years to come. We welcome you to the 2021 Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala in honor of Black History Month, celebrating African American and Jewish brotherhood.
As chairman of the board of the World Values Network, I would like to welcome you all to the 9th annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. The gala is in honor of Black History Month, celebrating African American and Jewish brotherhood. Both the African American and Jewish communities have experienced significant challenges historically, yet through faith, determination, and hope, we have tackled and continue to fight these key issues and can provide best practices and lessons learned for social cohesion and equality at the global level. Senate victories in Georgia recently by John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock are an awesome display of our unity. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening and hope you have a most enjoyable time. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. What a joy it is for us to welcome you this evening as we celebrate people of international stature who provide inspiration and uplift. This event is done during Black History Month to celebrate African American and Jewish brotherhood. I first and foremost want to extend my heartfelt thanks to the World Values Network team, especially my colleague Gabrielle Bell, for all they've done to make our 9th gala possible. And then to our special co-hosts, beginning with world-renowned mega philanthropist Robert Smith, who is also the chairman of the board of Carnegie Hall. Robert, thank you for everything you do, for global education, and for the untold many for whom you've provided support and comfort through these very difficult times. Robert, you are our dear friend, and all of America salutes your goodness and your commitment to philanthropy on a truly monumental scale. Then we have the CEO and artistic director of Carnegie Hall, Sir Clive Gillinson, along with his lovely wife Anya, very dear friends, who are joining our gala for the third time this year as co-hosts. The Fallick family, world-renowned Jewish philanthropists in the United States, Israel, and throughout the world. And of course, David and Mona Sterling, some of the best-known Jewish philanthropists in the New York metropolitan area and also on a national scale. We could not put on this beautiful evening without you, and we are so deeply grateful. Then there are our incredible honorees, beginning with Steve Harvey, one of those beloved figures on television, someone who makes us laugh and makes us think and makes us feel so deeply. Then the living legend, Dionne Warwick. What an opportunity to hear from someone who has helped us shape our lives and has leveraged music to make our souls jump and dance. Robert Greene and his phenomenal commitment to empowering every segment of society to participate fully in the financial markets. Patricia Bransford and her incredible educational entrepreneurship to provide opportunities to every segment of society. Dr. Oz, another legend of television, who has joined us in previous years as well, alongside luminaries like Elie Wiesel. Dr. Oz is the world's most famous physician. He helps cure us not just of medical ailments, but any kind of hopelessness and despair. Thank you, Dr. Oz, for being our dear friend over so many years. And then, my friends, and a very special tribute to mega philanthropist Sheldon Adelson. You're going to hear from the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the immediate past Secretary of State of the United States, Mike Pompeo. Sheldon was a dear friend of our organization, and he contributed the most vast sums to education, Holocaust memory, the global fight against genocide and human rights, and creating and strengthening and always maintaining the America-Israel relationship so that freedom and democracy will always flourish in the Middle East. We remember Sheldon's memory, and tonight we will celebrate it. My friends, above all else, tonight celebrates the values that create social cohesion and bring us all together. I know that we're a very partisan, divided country. I know that we're fighting unnecessarily. I join the call of all of those leaders who are saying that we should be one nation, under God, indivisible. And that's why we have to focus on, more than anything else, our values. Those threads that don't tear us apart, that don't pull us asunder, but rather are the threads of unity and the fabric of cohesion, so that we can continue to be people who support each other and love each other, even in these very difficult and sometimes dreadful times. I know that better times are ahead, but it will only be forged with one heart and with one mind and being one people. My friends, get ready for an evening that you will never forget, the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce two of our co-hosts this evening. Globally celebrated mega philanthropist Robert Smith, who also serves as the chairman of Carnegie Hall, along with Sir Clive Gillinson, the CEO and artistic director of Carnegie Hall and one of our organization's closest friends. To everyone who also participated to make this evening possible, God bless you. Robert Smith, please take it away.
Good evening. I'd first like to thank Rabbi Shmuley Boteya and the World Values Network, along with my co-host and our speakers this evening, Dr. Oz, Bob Green. On January 6th, we saw a new manifestation of the old alliance for civil rights between American Jews and African Americans, when the pastor from Dr. King's church and the descendant of Jewish immigrants who fled pogroms were elected both to the United States Senate in Georgia. But that same day in Washington, insurrectionists wielding Confederate flags and wearing shirts that glorified Auschwitz stormed the US Capitol. It was a reminder that our shared journey for justice is far from finished. There was another crisis that same day that you might not have seen on the news: staggering economic injustice. Here's just one statistic. The net worth of an average Black family is just 1/10 that of the average white family. That's homes, college funds, savings for emergencies, and nest eggs that make the difference between giving your kids a leg up in life or trapping them in generational poverty. The racial wealth gap should shock us as much as seeing the Confederate flag in the halls of Congress, but it should not surprise us. The struggle for economic justice has been bound up with the struggle for civil rights. So today I want to celebrate the history of shared experience and common purpose uniting the Jewish American community and the Black American community. But I also want to challenge us to see where we have fallen short and to recognize our unfinished business. As the poet Amanda Gorman said at the inauguration, being American is more than a pride we inherit, it's the past we step into and how we repair it. I've always admired the Jewish value of tikkun olam. Repairing the world is what we have to do together. President Obama has called the heroes who marched and boycotted and bled in civil rights in the 1950s and 60s the Moses generation. He said it's up to us, the Joshua generation, to finish the journey. This resonates with me because I grew up hearing from my mother about how she drove my brother and I some 1,700 miles from Denver to Washington, D.C. to hear Dr. King speak at the Lincoln Memorial in 1963. And it was my responsibility to carry on his dream. We also heard that day from Rabbi Joachim Prince, part of the coalition of Jews and Blacks that helped produce the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I love the Jewish tradition of retelling the Exodus story every year at Passover, so every generation learns to identify with those who are still in bondage and those who are still seeking freedom. And make no mistake, here in the land of the free, Black Americans are still seeking not just political rights and civil rights, but also economic justice. Because as Dr. King once asked, what does it profit a man to be able to eat at an integrated lunch counter if he doesn't have enough money to buy a hamburger? The fact is, today's inequalities in jobs, wages, and income and wealth are as severe as they were in 1950. The wages of Black workers are only 75% of those of white workers, not in 1968, today. Poverty rates for African Americans are more than twice that of white Americans today. These are the effects of accumulated inequity and the compounding wages of discrimination. For centuries now, the structural racism has kept Black Americans from participating in the capital part of capitalism. There are 4,700 banks in the US, but only 21 are Black owned. They hold less than 1% of America's total commercial banking assets. 70% of African American communities lack even a single bank branch. That means families can't get mortgages to buy a house, entrepreneurs can't get loans to start a new business, and small businesses can't get the capital they need to grow and to hire. The Jewish community has been an ally in the Black community's journey for social justice. But now it's time to take the next step and focus on the economic justice that has so long been lacking. We should face up to an uncomfortable fact. There were never enough Julius Rosenwalds, the founder of Sears, who funded thousands of schools and colleges for Black Americans. Never enough economic engagement from the community, business community, to match the spiritual and political engagement we rightly celebrate. Now's the time to change that. What is called for today is a massive and sustained investment in African American communities battered by the pandemic and ravaged by racism. I'm talking about building engines of wealth creation that can power real opportunity and eventually real equality. We need to think systemically because systemic oppression demands systemic investment. I'm coordinating leaders across industries to develop what we're calling the 2% solution. We're calling it reparative capital. And here's how it works. Every year, the average American family gives 2% of their income to charity. So I'm asking corporations to do the same, only instead of charity, I'm asking them to invest 2% of their net income in the economic infrastructure of Black communities. For instance, telecom and technology companies should invest 2% in the building out and connecting the last mile broadband to Black communities to enable distance learning for our children, telemedicine for our elderly, and digital enablement for our small businesses. Banks should invest 2% of their net income to modernize the banking infrastructure for Black communities and the businesses they serve. Bank of America has come up with an Equality Progress Sustainability Bond, which can enable the financing of all of these activities at almost de minimis rates. All companies, major corporations, and family businesses should deposit a minimum of 2% into Black-owned banks. If their money's going to sit in the bank, why not put it in a Black-owned bank? We're going to help spark the growth we sorely need. If just the top 10 banks in America signed on, they can invest over $20 billion over the next 10 years. That would mean historic investments in community banks, education, technology, and healthcare. It would mean Black families would have access to home loans, better schools, better nutrition, better healthcare, and better futures. This isn't altruism. Closing the racial wealth gap could increase GDP by up to 6%. Let me leave you with this tonight. For more than 50 years, my mother wrote a check every month for $25 to the United Negro College Fund. She believed we all have a responsibility, as it says in Isaiah, to be the repairers of the breach. That's what compelled her to drive two young sons across America to hear a reverend and a rabbi preach about civil rights. It's what we are called to do today. Like Dr. King, I refuse to believe, and I hope you do too, that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. Scripture tells us that justice is an eternal obligation. Let's accept it with joy. Thank you.
Good evening, distinguished guests and Rabbi Shmuley. My wife Anya and I are very honored that you've invited us to join you as co-hosts tonight. This event took me back to a conference I attended a few years ago, at which I was interviewed by Van Jones. When I described to him Carnegie Hall's central commitment to social justice in general and the African American community in particular, Van asked me what lay behind this commitment. My reply was based on two things: my mother and the fact that I'm Jewish. My mother was one of the finest cellists in Britain when I was growing up, but she had a very tough time as most of the jobs went to men. In addition, from our very early years, she had to bring us up as a single mother. As Jews, my wife and I have throughout our lives been intensely aware that for thousands of years, Jews have suffered from racism, discrimination, persecution, and many attempts to exterminate us, almost wherever we've lived. We, like African Americans, have also lived in a world where many people believed, and to this day some people still believe, that we're less than human. A mild reflection of this was the experience of Moses Mendelssohn, one of the greatest thinkers and philosophers of the 18th century. When he entered Berlin as an aspiring student, he had to enter the city through the gate specifically designated for Jews and cattle. Over time, I've come to understand ever more clearly just how fundamentally tribal we, the human race, are, whether about our ethnicity, religion, color, country, gender, or even our sports teams. One aspect of tribalism, which took me far too long to understand, is that we're all intensely aware of our own pain, but for some reason, we generally don't want to share that pain. We want to own it. We want to be unique to our tribe. In a world which is becoming ever more fragmented, with people living increasingly in echo chambers, where we only hear the opinions of those with whom we agree, there's a huge need for all of us to learn more about empathy, not only to understand the pain and suffering of others, but also to hear and to listen to the opinions of others, many of which are held as powerfully and with as much conviction and integrity as our own. Every one of us should find it incomprehensible that after the American Civil War, the Civil Rights Acts, and endless battles for equal rights, we still appear only to be at the foothills of defeating racism, particularly against black people in the US. However, racism against anyone is racism against all, and everyone needs to participate to ensure that this era is the last one in which we will still have to wonder why this stain on humanity still persists. Racism is not just an American disease, it exists wherever human beings collect. However, the legacy of slavery and the systemic racism that unquestionably still flows from it is an American disease, and if there is one country in the world that can defeat this, it is the US. No country is better at rising to the greatest challenges. However, we'll only defeat racism if everyone works together, and no two races are more capable of doing this than African Americans and Jews. Sadly, both races have had far too many opportunities to learn an immense amount about forgiveness. So thank you, Rabbi. At the root of our friendship, personally, is the admiration my wife and I share of your ability to seek to understand others and to listen openly to everyone's opinions. We all have so much to learn from you. Thanks.
Esteemed guests, my name is Nili Falik, and on behalf of the Falik Family Foundation and myself, it is my honor to welcome you here tonight to the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, held in honor of Black History Month, celebrating African American and Jewish brotherhoods. Tonight is also the first time in the 9 years of my co-hosting this event that mega philanthropist and great giving human being to millions of other people in need in the world, and our personal dear friend, Sheldon Gary Edelson of blessed memory, is no longer with us. Sheldon passed on 35 days ago and left a deep void. Both Sheldon and wife Dr. Miriam Edelson have contributed magnanimously with their vision, leadership, and generosity to make this a better world to live. In the fields of education, science and medicine, and in bonding different segments of our society, and so much more. Sheldon will be profoundly missed. Yehi Zichro Baruch. May his family and his memory be blessed, and may his memory be a blessing to his wife, family, and all of mankind. At this time, I would first like to offer my thanks to Rabbi Shmuley Boteach and the World Values Network for curating this important evening. The theme of social cohesion and inter-ethnic dialogue, in particular between our two communities, is more important than ever. And I'm glad to offer my support towards ensuring the continuation of this vital cooperation and conversation. I would also like to thank my fellow co-hosts of this evening, Robert Smith, Sir Clive and Anya Gillinson, and David and Monia Sterling, for all of their joint efforts regarding this evening and its program. My deep gratitude to our distinguished speakers and honorees for their strong commitment to social cohesion, equality, and justice, highlighted through their various programs and initiatives, focusing on youth empowerment, education, economic equality, and access to equal opportunities. And finally, I would like to thank you, our esteemed guests, for joining us this evening, and hope that in addition to enjoying this evening's program, you will take the knowledge and key points acquired today and use them as a stepping stone to ensuring further dialogue and cooperation with regards to the essential relationship that exists between the African American and the Jewish community. May our initiative together be rewarding to all.
The Rabbi Shmuley Boteah and the World Values Network with regards to the upcoming 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. I accept your kind offer to speak, and it's a great honor to be here. This year's gala is going to focus on the theme of honoring Black History Month, which is very important to me. And many of you appreciate that there's been a long friendship between the Jewish people and African Americans, and part of it's because they're faith-based groups. And the collaboration that's come about occurs because people in both groups respect that there's something bigger than just us. And given the state of our national and even global affairs, I think it's really important to strengthen the ties between all communities, but in particular pillars of American society like the African American community and the Jewish community. So I thought I'd take a few seconds to comment on why this has become such an important part of my show, because I've been talking about health disparities on the program for years, but it came to a head this year as I began to examine some of the data. And there have been wonderful contributions to this process. Ray Dalio just gave $50 million to my hospital, the New York Presbyterian, Columbia, in order to study health disparities. There have been very kind donations like Mike Bloomberg giving $100 million to be split up amongst 4 predominantly Black medical schools in this country, because we need to train more Black doctors. So let me explain why this topic has gained so much credibility and so much support. First off, the impact of COVID on the African American and Latino communities has been dramatic. I mean, it's probably twice the complication rates of getting COVID-19, in part because a lot of folks in these communities were on the front lines. They were infected early on. I want them to be in the clinical trials to study the vaccines, and they have actually been included in the Pfizer trial and will be in future trials as well. But a lot of times there's a hesitancy amongst Blacks in being involved in clinical trials for understanding reasons, because they've been taken advantage of. It's unfortunate, but it's real, and I understand it. And it's true, I think, of many groups who feel like they're on the outside. But the disparity that we're seeing in health outcomes with Blacks is not explainable by poverty alone. So although poverty contributes to all groups of individuals in getting poor health, it's not the only explanation. And it turns out that even affluent Black patients don't seem to be able to buy white quality health care. It has remained stubbornly out of reach. And I'm passionate about this topic because as an American, I think we all agree that we need a level playing field. No one's going to hand you the gold trophy or the blue ribbon. You have to earn success, but you deserve to be on the playing field, because guess what? If you're not on the field, you can't win the game. And so how do we get everybody out on the playing field? Because part of our goal as Americans and part of our promise, the American ideal, is that everybody gets to contribute as much as they possibly can. And you should be able to achieve as much as your God-given abilities would allow. Not that we're all ever going to be the same. I'm never going to be able to play basketball like some of my heroes, but I can operate on the heart better than a lot of other people could have. So I know where I can succeed, where I won't. I get to be as best as I can in each of those categories. Even if I'm not better than everybody else, I get to try. And I think that's true for everybody who can hear my voice right now. So how do we help fix the healthcare problem that has remained stubbornly out of reach for so many? Well, I understand the hesitancy of Blacks within the healthcare system. The Tuskegee syphilis experiments, the Mississippi appendectomy trials, these were overuse of hysterectomies, basically, in that project. It's shameful, but it has scarred generations of Blacks who look at the healthcare system and clinical trials and new opportunities like vaccinations with skepticism. You would too. And in the Jewish community, I think there's understandable skepticism as well. I remember taking care when I was training at Columbia with a Jewish woman whose last doctor was a Nazi Mengele, who had maimed her. And so she, not surprisingly, wasn't too happy about talking to doctors who seem so smart and intelligent, and but don't always have the caring gene. It gets beaten out of us at times. So there are challenges that historically medicine has faced and has created for itself. But let's go over the numbers in the black community. Black women are 243%, I looked it up, 243% more likely to die from childbirth-related causes. 2.5 times more likely in this country than white women. And black infants are roughly twice as likely to die under the care of a white physician than under the care of a black physician. Think about that. Why are black infants dying more often when they get cared for by white doctors than black doctors? I don't think that doctors are purposely racist, but there is implicit bias that is present in all of us. We just don't ask the extra questions sometimes. We don't understand as well, or we're not asked questions that are appropriate because there's awkwardness in the cultural barriers that arise, especially between races. Now, black men, just to add one more factor, are 50 to 75% more likely to check their blood pressure, to see if they have diabetes, and to get preventive care if they got a black doctor. Somehow, the cultural bond that these groups have to each other allow them to speak about topics more effectively than if someone from an outside group gets involved. In fact, I wrote an op-ed on this goal we have, and I've been talking about on the show the idea that we need more black doctors. In fact, the More Black Doctors campaign has gained a lot of credibility and following, in part because people didn't realize some of the facts I just mentioned. And the campaign's main goal is to change the current percentage of doctors who are black, which is about 5%, and move it towards the 13% of the population that is black. It doesn't have to be exactly 13%, but we ought to move in that direction. And the percentage of black doctors really hasn't budged much in the last few years. We can do better. And one of the biggest barriers that I'm witnessing is that young black people don't think medicine is a career for them because they don't have any role models in their family and their community that they can look towards. So by getting black doctors who are currently in the system and doing well to speak to black medical students and getting them to speak to the black undergrads and black high school students, and we use my Kids Foundation Health Corps to help with this process, we can make a dent with this More Black Doctors campaign. And I'll tell you, because I'm in high schools around the country with Health Corps, and again, Health Corps is our foundation that copies the Peace Corps' effort to harvest the energy of reaching college grads. And instead of putting them in Africa to build dams, you put them in high schools around America to provide mentoring to kids, especially kids of color in underserved areas. But we can get those young kids to think that they have a much bigger opportunity than they ever thought possible, that there's a much broader vista of opportunities than anyone's ever shared with them. They'll go into medicine. They won't all become heart doctors. You know, sometimes they're going to become nurses or orderlies or the technicians, but they have the ability to find jobs that are high quality, well-paying, and open up opportunities for themselves and people in their families. And I think that's one of the major benefits of #MoreBlackDoctors. So please join the campaign. It speaks very much to Jewish values and much to what Rabbi Shmuley speaks to frequently, because we have a desire, a need, and an obligation to think bigger than just ourselves. This is just one more good example to invest your effort. God bless you for being here today, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the program.
Welcome, esteemed guests, to the 9th Annual Champions Jewish Values International Awards Gala, held in honor of Black History Month. My name is Candy Carter, and I'm the executive producer and showrunner of the Tamron Hall Show. Rabbi Shmuley and I have had a long and loving relationship ever since I was his producer on The Oprah Winfrey Show. And it is my honor to be here with you this evening as we celebrate the important alliance and friendship between the African American and Jewish communities. It is my honor to introduce you to one of the most revered and legendary singers of our time. Miss Dionne Warwick is a New Jersey native, 5-time Grammy Award-winning artist, and was just recently nominated to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A true musical icon, she was only the second African American solo female artist to win a Grammy after Ella Fitzgerald, and has since released more than 60 charted hits, like Walk On By and That's What Friends Are For. She has received countless accolades for her music, but she has also gained worldwide recognition for her philanthropy and various humanitarian efforts. And she is a proud member, I must mention, of the Zeta Phi Beta sorority. Please welcome Rabbi Shmuley who has the honor of presenting the Champion of Music and Youth Empowerment Award to the incomparable Miss Dionne Warwick.
My friends, here at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, we are so honored to present the legendary Dionne Warwick with the Champion of Music and Youth Empowerment Award, celebrating Dionne's amazing career as a Grammy-winning musical icon for songs such as Do You Know the Way to San Jose? I'll Never Fall in Love Again. I find it difficult to say these titles because I actually want to break out into song. They animate my youth. They inspired me. They uplifted me. Deja Vu, That's What Friends Are For. And in addition to Dionne's legendary musical career, becoming one of the great musical icons of the 20th and 21st centuries, she is such an incredible humanitarian and is involved in so many humanitarian initiatives. She has a heart of platinum, not silver, not gold, platinum. Dionne Warwick has engaged throughout her life in helping all of those in need and affording them the dignity of being God's children. She has served as a U.S. ambassador for health and a global ambassador for the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO. Dionne's important work has focused on youth education and in particular, an African-American history and the preservation of music education within the school curricula. And this has been such an important focus of hers on youth empowerment through the Dionne Warwick Institute in New Jersey. He's been involved in the fight against AIDS, becoming one of the first artists to lead the music industry in this landmark struggle with her recording, That's What Friends Are For, where she was joined with such fellow legends like Elton John, Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight. And of course, Dionne Warwick has been honored by the American Red Ribbon AIDS Foundation and the Black AIDS Institute for her monumental contributions on that front. Dionne, I cannot thank you enough for being with us and for affording us your time and your stature and your heart. And thank you for everything you do for God's children. And it's therefore my honor to present to Miss Dionne Warwick, the Champion of Music and Youth Empowerment at the Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. World Values Network, the Hebrew date, we follow the Bible, the biblical lunar calendar, 6th of Adar, 5781. And on the Gregorian calendar, February 18th, 2021. And thank you, Dionne. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for being an honoree.
My pleasure. It's a beautiful award. Thank you so very much.
Well, look at what you've achieved. You know, the knowledge that we have to leverage fame and celebrity to empower God's children in education. I mean, music alone is uplifting, but you've taken it far beyond that. It's not just your career. You've leveraged your fame, your celebrity, your stature to help people. What motivates you in what you do for others, Dionne?
You know, my grandfather was a minister, and he told us, when I say us, myself and my siblings as well, that we're all put here on this earth for a reason, and that is to be of service to each other. And I don't find it difficult to do that. And so what I do from my heart, and because I have the wherewithal in which to do it, for no other reason.
You know, my children who love your music, they also love your tweets. My son he's always calling me and telling me what Dionne is writing and how you're being retweeted by some of the world's most influential people. So you've really, social media, you find it to be an empowering platform to spread your important humanitarian work and ideas?
Yeah, you know, it's been a lot of fun for me. You know, I've been having a really good time getting to know some of the youngsters in our industry, poking a little fun at them, and they're taking it in that vernacular, which I'm thrilled about. We have a giggle, and as a matter of fact, some wonderful things have occurred because of it. Chance, the rapper, he and I will be going in studio to record a song dedicated to taking care of the homeless, children, feeding people that can't afford or that have the wherewithal in which to feed themselves. And then we have a young man, The Weekend, And he and I also will be going in studio to record. Uh, their hearts and their minds are in the right place. I've had conversation with Taylor Swift. I'm talking now with a little girl called Cardi B. You know, these are babies that are in our industry, and they now know that they can stand on my shoulders. I'm standing on the shoulders of some of the major icons of our industry. And I think they're getting a kick out of the fact that there's a grown up on Twitter now.
Like my son is follows everything on Twitter, and he just reads your tweets, and he's calling me up and telling me everything that you're writing. And Deanna, it speaks to the timelessness of your music and your message. That you're a woman of such grace and beauty, and you look amazing, thank God.
Thank you.
Healthy and robust during this awful pandemic, which we hope God will remove this terrible scourge from the earth.
Please.
The timelessness of your message, that you continue to exert so much influence directly to your fans all around the world, but now to a whole new generation of artists. Do you see the new generation kind of embracing this message of social change and dignity for all, and fighting bigotry and prejudice, and making sure that all the people who are in need are fed and looked after?
Absolutely. I think that, and I have said it so many times, long before this madness that we were going through occurred, that it's going to be the babies that take care of us. Those are the ones who are going to see how silly we grown-ups have been over these years, and what they can do to alter it. They're the ones who are living it. And I think undoubtedly they have a handle on what to do and how to do it. I think that they're the ones who are going to lead us to the fruition that we are looking for and the solution to it all. Yes, absolutely. I think our youngsters truly is the answer.
You know, your music always touched me. When I was a boy growing up, child of divorce in Los Angeles, and your music touched me so deeply because it was about love.
Yes.
And there was an innocence to your lyrics. There was an innocence to the melodies. It spoke to a higher love. It spoke to a pure, more radical form of love that was just so I guess humane. It was so human. It just touched people's hearts. And I think that's why your melodies have. What is the inspiration for your focus on love and on romance and the kind of just intimate, passionate bond that can exist between two people?
You know, it's not only two people. I think it's the entire universe. I was taught that God is love, and I truly believe that, and I live that. I come from a gospel singing family, and I was taught the Bible by my grandfather and my mother and father, and I try to live my life by it. And of course, I make mistakes, you know, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'm a human being. However, I do know that what I learned as a child and continue to live this life that I live, the words of prayer are very, very important to me. And I make sure that not only do I do it, but I have two wonderful sons who have created some incredible grandbabies for me. And they also are very, very much a part of what I believe. And I think that basically really is the answer. You know, God is love. And those particular words that you were talking about, the songs that I've sung, being a messenger, I'm very careful about what kind of a message I bring to you through my music. And Hal David, who wrote those wonderful words for me to sing, Burt Bacharach wrote those beautiful melodies for me to sing. So we're all on the same page, I think. You know, we all realize what the strength of love and how to present it to people, so that it becomes a case of, you know, you may be at a loss for words 1 or 2 times during your lifetime. Throw my record on, it'll say it for you.
It's lifted me up countless times. You know, one of the things that I think is very special between the African American community is what you're discussing, this emphasis on spirituality. And and God, and it's quite remarkable to me, the African American community's emphasis on prayer and
Yes.
God and the Bible.
Mhm.
And my God, almost so many influential African American celebrities, personalities, they all have had a father or a grandfather who was a pastor, which means that there are
Yeah.
10 billion pastors.
The vocation of choice.
It's a beautiful thing. Can I just ask you, Dion, how are you doing through the pandemic? Everyone good? Everyone safe? Everyone healthy?
Yeah, thank God. Everyone is fine. Thank you. I personally this has been a year since I've been in my home, literally in my house. I've been confined here. And it's the first time I've had this much time in my own home. I'm on the road so often. The only times I usually see my house is when I come back off the road to unpack and repack and get back on the road. So I got to sleep in my own bed for a change and get up when I wanted to get up, if I wanted to get up at all. Go up into my own kitchen and cook my own food the way I wanted to eat it. It's been almost a vacation I've never had. So I've been enjoying my pandemic sequestration. I'm ready to get out here now, though. I must say that, if it isn't a COVID, now we've got 18 inches of snow in my backyard. So.
Well, it's like what the Bible says. God puts Noah in the ark, but then he says to him in Hebrew, "Semi nateva," time has come to get out of the darn ark. Get out, go back into the world. Well, Dion, we look forward to your music lighting the path, leading the way. We look forward to emulating your example of great humanitarian work. It's our honor to present this award to you, but I
cannot wait to get it. Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's an even bigger honor that you've accepted and joined us for this gala, and that you're a person of such substantive values and humanitarian advocacy. So God bless you. I have to tell you, flipping amazing.
Well, thank you.
But God bless you, and thank you for everything, and God watch over you in all that you do.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Take good care.
From game shows and comedy to business and producing, Steve Harvey is one of the most recognizable Renaissance men in the country. We've been cracking up with him on Family Feud and waking up to his advice on the Steve Harvey Morning Show. A New York Times best-selling author and acclaimed producer and actor, and one of the original kings of comedy, Steve Harvey is a mogul in the entertainment world and a force for good. Tonight, we honor him for creating the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation, an organization devoted to youth, educational enrichment, mentoring, and fostering the minds of future leaders. And if you follow him on Instagram like I do, you'll know that he's one of the best dressed folks around, hands down. And he's an avid golfer, as am I. So Steve, I'm looking forward to getting around in when the world opens up. Please welcome Rabbi Shmuley, who will be presenting Steve Harvey with the Champion of Education Award.
Hi, everyone. Tonight, at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, it is my honor to present to Steve Harvey, the international celebrity, personality, game show host, comic, author, and so much more, with the Champion of Education Award for the absolutely vital programs that are run through the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation. I want you all to know that this foundation has astonishingly reached over 6 million households. I need not impress upon you what the number 6 million means for us Jews. Look, we all know education doesn't open just one door. It opens 1,000 doors. We have to educate and encourage our youth in order to inspire the future generations. Education is the key component and consideration for ensuring the sustainability of our country and the global community. Youth have been the main architects of social cohesion, and they continue to be our partners in promoting the global message of solidarity, of course, justice, and social responsibility. When addressing the vital issue that we're focused on tonight of African American and Jewish brotherhood, it's essential to engage youth in our outreach because they are the pivot. They are central to ensuring that the historic bonds between our two communities remain strong, vibrant, absolutely inclusive, and values-oriented. Lives extinguished by Nazi Germany and Hitler. And now Steve is reaching a similar number of people to recognize the image of God that's imprinted on each and every one of them, to develop their human potential, to give them opportunity, to tell them that they matter. It's God's work. And the Stephen Marjorie Harvey Foundation provides youth with the guidance and direction necessary for creating sustainable future and development. Even as a relationship counselor, reading your incredible book, Think Like a Man, Act Like a Woman, the international bestseller, watching you on Family Feud, and just seeing families come together with this all-important goal of defeating the other family, but working together and loving each other. Even in this easygoing, comedic atmosphere, there is so much substance, there is so much spirituality, there is so much of God's work. And it's therefore my honor to present to you, to Mr. Steve Harvey, the champion of education at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. This is presented by the World Values Network on the Jewish lunar date, the 6th of Adar 5781, and on the secular date of February 18th, 2021. Congratulations, Steve. And what do you think?
Wow. Thank you for having me. It's so good seeing you again, my friend. First of all, it's such an honor for me. Always hope when things are happening to me like this, that my mother and father, who have passed on, is somewhere watching me, that their prayers were answered, that their little boy turned himself into something. I was very fortunate they were able to see some of my success early on before they passed. So I'm hoping that they got a front row seat watching this right now, because this is such an honor. It's not only an honor, but it's a privilege. Service to me is a privilege. It's what I'm made for. I say oftentimes, as I get awards or I stand in front of people to explain my success to them or my being, and I have a saying that I use all the time, and I say, my career is what you're paid for, but your calling is what you're made for. And I was made for my calling. My career, which has been absolutely wonderful to me. I mean, look, I'm an entertainer. I get the absolute sheer pleasure of doing something I've done for free the bulk of my life and managed to somehow trick these people into cutting me a check for it. I make people laugh and smile, and I try to put joy in people's hearts, because laughter is great medicine. But at the end of the day, I found out what God was shaping me into, and it was to put this calling on my life. He's taken my fame and allowed me to do some wonderful things with it, the privilege to serve people. And so having this award as the champion of education, it means a lot to me. It means a lot to my foundation. It means a lot to my wife. It means a lot to my staff. And then coming from you and this organization, I mean, this is tremendous, because I think we talked before about the need for us to be more unified and understand each other's plight. So having me here today is an honor and a privilege, and such a great joy in my heart right now. Yeah, when you bring up the point, we were on TV and we were talking about the relationship between Christians, Jews, and Muslims. It's quite interesting, because I just left the Middle East and I visited a place, because in Abu Dhabi, they are making serious headway in bringing us all together. The head of Abu Dhabi has done some tremendous work in the Middle East to try to, over there, which I don't understand the situation, I don't claim to know, but they do, and to get involved with Palestinians and that situation over there. And I was just listening to them speak about it, and they've created a place in Abu Dhabi where it's a multi-religious place, where there's synagogues, churches, and mosques all in the same place. And I mean, I'm standing there and I'm going, wait a minute, what? Just to see these people making such a large attempt at hope for all of us who are people of love and hope.
I watched your trip to Abu Dhabi, and I was so inspired by your message of conciliation and harmony and the innovations that are taking place in the Middle East. I was at the White House for the signing of the Abraham Accords that created peace between the UAE and Israel and Bahrain, and now Sudan, and now Morocco. And Steve, you're becoming a vital component by highlighting the incredible progress in the Middle East and friendship with our Arab and Islamic brothers and sisters.
Look, I mean, love is still the number one thing that people seek in this world, love and happiness. And I think there's enough people that operate from love that if we just find each other, we can do something about this. And people like you and myself, I mean, look, if anybody should get it together, we should understand, if anybody doesn't understand what it feels like to be thoroughly oppressed. And so I applaud people like yourself, Rabbi, who make concerted efforts to bring about some love and some light. And look, man, I just started thinking of myself. You say I'm more than a comedian. I was trying to think of, what am I?
Well, since you're asking, I'll tell you what you are. You are an American light to the nations. You are an international celebrity who takes American values, albeit through the all-important conduit of laughter and entertainment, so that people's defenses go down, so that you lift them up and make them joyous, especially while we're suffering from a global pandemic, and you make their hearts and their spirits open to your message. That's what you are, an American light to the nations, and I salute you for it. You know, you say that you're only a comic and an entertainer. You're so much more than that. I was on your show. I was honored, to travel to Chicago and to be a guest on your show. That day, we talked about one of the most substantive things that I've ever discussed on daytime TV. We had a serious theological conversation about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I remember you championing Islam, something I really appreciated, because so often we allow some of the worst actors who betray Islam to become de facto ambassadors of Islam, which was never true, because our Muslim brothers and sisters, for the most part, of course, are peace-loving. And we see it now with is peace between Israel and the Gulf states, and God willing, it'll continue throughout all the Arab states. And I remember your hammering home that message.
I think that laughter is such a common medicine for mankind. I don't know a person who doesn't like to laugh. I know some sour people in this world, of course, but the average person loves to find a way to laugh. And Family Feud has been a great branding tool for me. I took Family Feud to Africa with the international rights, and I was told by everybody, it won't work, it won't work. I took it to South Africa. It's the #1 show on the continent. I am now talking to the United Arab Emirates about bringing Family Feud there. Because see, what people have to see Arab people and Islamic people in a different light to get rid of the propaganda that's been said about these people. If you go there, it's such a place of peace. It's one of the most wonderful places on earth to visit. If you want to go somewhere and not have to look over your shoulder and really find out what it's like to walk down streets of peace, that Abu Dhabi, I just haven't seen a place filled with this much peace. And I want to bring Family Feud there so I can show the people laughing. They're such family people they love. And like the conference you mentioned, how you all got together to bring cohesiveness. I've said with some of these people, it's just a fabulous group of people over here. And my job, I don't know how it is, and I don't know where God has me in this whole thing, but he just keeps putting me in these places. Somebody told me one time that God never puts you in a place and doesn't qualify you to be there. So I just keep finding a way to show up.
Keep on doing what you're doing. And the more you walk in God's ways, and I know how important your faith is to you, the more God will walk with you as well. God bless you.
I thank you so much. I love you, brother. Thank you for this honor.
God bless you.
My wife says thank you, and I appreciate it. I'm going to keep doing what God put me here to do.
Yeah, please give your wife, Marjorie, our warmest love and our warmest regards. God bless you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As a former executive producer of The View, I have to say I loved our next honoree, Titus Burgess, in 30 Rock playing the hairstylist of Sherry Shepherd, a former View co-host. He garnered 5 Emmy nominations for his role on the hit comedy series The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And on Broadway, he's wowed audiences for years. His latest project is the highly anticipated Aretha Franklin biopic, where he'll play the legendary gospel artist James Cleveland opposite Jennifer Hudson. I've seen the trailer and I can't wait until that movie comes out. We are delighted to have him here performing for us this evening. Please welcome Titus Burgess.
Hi guys, I'm Titus Burgess. I'm not Jewish, but my piano player is. The sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun. Just thinking about tomorrow clears away the cobwebs and the sorrow until there's none. And I'm stuck with a day that's gray and lonely. I just pick up my chin and grin and I say, oh, the sun will come out tomorrow, but you gotta hang on till tomorrow. Come on, my, tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're only a day away. Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're always a day. It's very clear our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. The radio and the telephone and the movies that we know may just be passing fantasies, and in time may go. But oh, my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. In time the rocks may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay, but our love is here to stay. But oh, my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. In time the rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay, but our love is here. Our love is here. Our love is here to stay.
In 2007, Rabbi Shmuley and Debbie Boteach founded the World Values Network to further the Jewish people's vision of impacting the world globally with the power of universal values. Over the past few years, we have seen a dramatic rise in racial injustice, anti-Semitism, and discrimination at the communal and global level, and most recently, a pandemic which has disproportionately affected people of color, Latinos, and other vulnerable populations, encouraging further marginalization, discrimination, and intolerance within many of our communities. Furthermore, white nationalists and neo-Nazis are on the ascendance, with political parties in North America and Europe sharing the same xenophobic, discriminatory rhetoric that echoes the conflicts of tragedies we thought were far behind us. Aiming to combat this hatred and promote the universal values of justice and equality, the World Values Network proudly brought together, through our enormous social media and mainstream media reach, a wide array of dignitaries and thousands of audience participants to our debates and lectures on universal values and values-based leadership. The World Values Network is also a global leader in genocide prevention and perpetuating the memory of its victims through ensuring that the lessons of the Holocaust and genocides in Rwanda and Armenia and others live on as strong reminders of the consequences of viewing any human being as anything less than her or his true infinite worth. Rabbi Shmuley serves as a global ambassador of the Jewish people, appearing across all media and social media platforms, and especially television and radio, writing columns for international publications and publishing books on subjects ranging from values-based living, healthy families, sacred sexuality, and the blessed life to combating human rights abuses and genocide. Ultimately, the World Values Network's core principle is to fight passionately for the universal values that bind us as human beings against all forms of bigotry. We are committed to doing everything in our power to fight hate, prevent racism, injustice, and inequality, while promoting universal Jewish values to create a world filled with light, love, and respect for the infinite dignity of each and every one of God's children.
This has been a very difficult year of loss, ladies and gentlemen. I personally lost my father in May of 2020. And then at the beginning of this calendar year in 2021, the Jewish world lost mega philanthropist Sheldon Adelson, whose generosity has transformed Holocaust memory, special trips to Israel for young people throughout the world, medical research on a global level, education. And we lost a very strong bridge in the America-Israel relationship. Sheldon's philanthropy had almost no precedent on its scale and in its vision. And there are no two people better equipped to share with us the profound nature of his legacy than our honored guests this evening, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the immediate past Secretary of State of the United States of America, Michael Pompeo.
When someone of exceptional vitality and achievements leaves this world, he leaves a tremendous void, and it's very difficult to imagine at first life without him. This is very much the case with Sheldon. Sheldon had an enormous presence because he had not only the personality, but the achievements, the drive, the convictions, the desire to change our world for the better, to protect the state of Israel, which he viewed as essential to protecting the future of the Jewish people, to protect America. He loved both Israel and America equally. He wanted to see the great Israeli alliance with America strengthen even further, and he did that. He wanted to see medical problems solved, and he and Mary have contributed enormously over the years to that cause. And he wanted to see the flourishing of businesses everywhere, which he did by himself with his incredible talent. I think he was an extraordinary human being, unabashed in his convictions, unafraid to voice them, unafraid to challenge those who challenge him. And in many ways, he was an exemplary Jewish patriot and an American patriot. And I think that he had the most incredible combination of the two that I have seen. It's very hard to think of a world without him. I'll always remember his friendship and Miri's. It's something that moves my heart, and I hope that all of you will, as I do, and I'm sure all of you will do as I do, and that's simply to say, we shall never forget him.
Good evening. Let me begin by saying what an honor it is to be participating this evening in the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. Thank you for having me here. And to that point, there has been, over the last decades, no greater champion of Jewish values and defender of the Jewish homeland and its relationship with the United States than was Mr. Sheldon Adelson. So many people have their stories of his kindness and his commitment. from the tens of thousands of team members who continue to get their wages even after the hotels in Las Vegas went dark due to COVID-19, to those who benefited from his philanthropic efforts to advance medical research. All those he touched could see that his generosity was real, it was genuine, and indeed it was noble. He also built a great business, and he shared greatly in its prosperity. Just as importantly, he built an understanding of the world, and he shared that vision as well. Stories. Everyone who knew Sheldon had stories. Those who knew him and his wonderful, loving wife, Miriam, all appreciate stories. I met Sheldon in the summer of 2011 in Israel. I told him that I was a brand new member of Congress and I had served as an armor officer in the United States Army. He told me of the great tank battles fought on the Golan, and we shared our mutual faith in the power of two great nations built on Abrahamic traditions, democracies, working alongside each other to protect all of those in need. I've now had the good fortune to travel to Israel many, many times. Indeed, what is oddly deemed controversial on my last trip, I visited Judea and Samaria and also had the chance to walk the old city of David. What that visit confirmed was precisely what Sheldon implored me to take on board back in 2011. The Jewish values and the nobility of Israel's place in the world are to be revered. And Sheldon lived those values. May the Lord bless Miriam and all of their family, and may we all remember Mr. Adelson's grand vision to which he dedicated his life. Thank you.
Good evenings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Sterling, and together with my wife, Mona, we are co-chairs of this evening's dinner. I would first like to recognize our fellow co-chairs, Robert F. Smith, the Fallick family, and Sir Clive and Anya Gillinson. And thank you so much for the hard work that you have all put in to make this dinner the success that it is. We just heard moving and personal tributes from the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, recognizing Sheldon Adelson, of blessed memory, and his philanthropy that has set new records, not just in the Jewish world, but also in the world in general. Both men, the Prime Minister and the former Secretary of State, were integrally involved in the development and the signing of the Abraham Accords, which recognized the fact that through shared values, there is more that bring us together than pull us apart. This, my friends, has been Rabbi Shmuley's work throughout his entire life. Rabbi Shmuley has said time and time again that in the Torah is written that all humans are created in God's image and therefore are equal in God's eyes and should have the dignity and the justice that they deserve. Rabbi Shmuley has fought tirelessly for this, and it is through the World Values Network that this work is realized. What Rabbi Shmuley is trying to do, he's trying to get everyone to focus on the values that he believes they inherently have, and those values bring us together. And so what Rabbi Shmuley feels is if we use our values as, say, a moral compass, they'll be far more pulling us together than pulling us apart. Tonight's dinner is a perfect example of that. The celebration of African-American and Jewish friendship throughout the ages is something that is rooted in both of our values and both of our shared experiences. But how do we bring everybody together around our shared values? Well, Robert F. Smith and Rabbi Shmuley Boteach have a plan. They want to launch a significant and massive media campaign, interviewing leaders and influencers from around the world, talking about their values and what it's meant in their life and how it's guided their decisions. They want to make these videos accessible to the entire world. They want people to aspire to live by the values that we are talking about here this evening. Robert F. Smith, in connection with this plan, has committed $2.5 million worth of resources. But that's only scratching the surface. It would be wonderful if we could put together at least a matching of that here this evening by getting everybody who is listening to this dinner to text a pledge to the following number that you see at the bottom of the screen, 518-559-0852. That's 518-559-0852. Please text a pledge immediately to support this very, very important work. We want to bring the World Values Network throughout the entire world, through the Black people and brown people and white people and Jewish people and Christian people and Muslim people and Hindu people. We want everybody to understand that it's our values that bring us together. It's our shared experience as human beings. And the fact is that we were all equal under the eyes of the Lord, and this work will bring us together. So please support this very important work, 518-559-0852, with the most incredibly generous gift from Robert F. Smith of $2.5 million in resources to get this project done. We need you to step up now and match it as best you can. So please, again, 518-559-0852. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The rest of the evening will continue, and the text-to-pledge will be open for the rest of the evening. Thank you again, and God bless.
One of the very special initiatives that the World Values Network will be launching this year is a values voice, bringing values, God willing, to hundreds of millions of people via unique videos of a short duration, just a few minutes in length, heavily animated, but where we ask world-renowned personalities to share the one value that has animated, inspired, and guided them throughout their lives. Here tonight, we have the first of those videos with Virgil Wood, the civil rights icon and leader who has become a living legend. He always insists that I call him Brother Virgil. And who better to share with us the centrality and pivotal nature of values than Brother Virgil, one of the living legends and icons of the civil rights movement.
My name is Dr. Virgil A. Wood. I consider myself grandpa to the children of the world with their permission. My dearest value and greatest dream is the Jubilee. Former slaves in America called their freedom Jubilee. That, for me, is reason enough. I've invested my whole life in that cause. I fought alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and went to jail many times. I've taught and preached these causes for more than 50 years, about one Jubilee cycle out of my people's 400-year sojourn here in America. In the Jubilee, all slaves are emancipated, all debts are forgiven, all homes and lands return to their original owners, bondage broken, all slates wiped clean, neighbors reunited. Thus, inequities that had built up over time are adjudicated without violence or bloodshed. The Jubilee recognizes, like cream, wealth bunches at the top. Instead of hoping it will trickle down to the poor, it tells us to let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, and make the world work for 100% of all humanity, to quote the prophet Amos and our Buckminster Fuller. Alive with the hope that their day of freedom would come, the former slaves would leave bondage behind like Exodus, transform their surroundings like the great Jubilee. They remained among their oppressors, confronted injustice on its own turf, and they and their allies built a road to real freedom, crafting beloved economies that uplifted both the former slaves and the white agrarian poor. We choose to transform the darkness that we cannot leave behind. And so we fight on, turning our Egypt into our promised land. And so it is.
I'm Sander Gerber. It's a great privilege to introduce a man grounded in traditional American values which he used to guide American foreign policy. Secretary Pompeo's range of foreign policy achievements and strategic leadership is impressive. From opening the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem to supporting Israeli sovereignty on the Golan Heights in Judea Samaria and helping to implement the historic Abraham Accords, labeling BDS as an anti-Semitic movement, and beyond Israel, advancing a human rights agenda around the world. Mike is no slouch in academics. He graduated first at West Point. He was on the Harvard Law Review, corporate lawyer, started a business, entered Congress, CIA, then head of the State Department. Pretty darn impressive. Mike is a guy who gets the big things right, from China, Israel, Russia, Iran. He's not a slave to popular opinion. Patient and persistent is a quality that defines Mike, and his many successes, for instance, China turning around Europe on 5G and elsewhere, the Gulf diplomacy, required long effort and bearing misplaced criticism along the way. Mike represents the best of American leadership, and I might add that our country is fortunate that he's still so young. No one is more fitting to receive this award, the Champion of International Human Rights Award, than my friend, our friend, Mike Pompeo. Now turning over the floor to you, Rabbi Shmuley, for the presentation of the award. Thank you.
Here at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, we are extremely honored to present former Secretary of State Michael R. Pompeo with the Champion of International Human Rights Award, our first such award. Secretary Pompeo distinguished himself, serving as America's foremost diplomat in always fighting for, upholding, and passionately promoting a human rights agenda that was reflective of America's highest ideals for liberty, freedom, human equality, and human dignity. Secretary Pompeo helped to enact the toughest sanctions ever against the terror-funding Iranian regime with their genocidal intent against Israel and the Jewish people, even as others turned a blind eye to Iran's barbaric treatment of its LGBT citizens, hanging gays from cranes in town squares, their brutal abuses of women, including the unspeakably barbaric practice of allowing women to be stoned to death. My father was born in Iran, and to see that country descend into that barbarity because of its government, which murders and slaughters its people, is nothing short of tragic. Secretary Pompeo assisted in enacting the toughest ever sanctions against the mullahs so that Iran could no longer finance the slaughter of innocents throughout the globe. In addition, Secretary Pompeo stood up proudly against the ferocious slaughter and genocide of the Uyghur people in Xinjiang province in China. Secretary Pompeo has always stood with the Middle East's only democracy and bastion of human rights, the State of Israel, against international demonization and anti-Semitic attacks. For all these reasons, and for serving as an American light unto the nations, the World Values Network is so pleased to award Secretary of State Michael R. Pompeo with a Champion of International Human Rights Award. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us at our gala. My respect for you is immense. I watched you with such admiration as you represented our nation throughout the world, upholding the highest American ideals of goodness, of righteousness, and justice. And thank you so much for accepting this award. And it reads, to Secretary of State Michael R. Pompeo, Champion of International Human Rights at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, the World Values Network. February 18th, 2021, and then we have the Jewish lunar date, the 6th of Adar, 5,781 years since creation. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for the kind words. They are so humbling. The service that I have been able to perform is something that's in my heart. Not just when I was the Secretary of State and the CIA director, but during my time in service in Congress as well. This relationship between Israel and the United States is unbelievably important to the American people. It's great that I've been given this award about human rights. It's something I've cared about deeply. I first started thinking about this when I was a cadet at West Point. Now, goodness gracious, I don't want to say how long ago, too long ago, about life and how responsible sovereign nations have an obligation to protect not only their own citizens, but do a good turn in the world as well. And that a strong America and partnering with democracies like Israel can lead to a better place and a better world. I then saw up close and personal the threat that Iran posed. And when I think of Jewish values, when I think of these Abrahamic traditions, I'm a Christian evangelical believer. When I think of the Abrahamic traditions and the values that your organization puts forward in the world, this is something that I know we all have an obligation to continue to fight for, to continue to work on. You mentioned Western China. We talk about what happened in Germany in the 1930s, and we say we'll never permit these kinds of things to happen again. We've all said it. They're happening there today. They're treating these people with forced abortions and sterilizations and putting people in things that look and feel like internment camps. We all know this isn't right. And we know that the regime in Iran would do that with every ounce of energy in their being. We only have to listen to the words about their intent on the destruction of Israel, the Jewish homeland, and their denial of history. It's important for America to stand for that. I was proud of the work that our team did, that our administration did for the entire 4 years. I'm incredibly humbled and proud of the fact that you have selected me to receive this award. Thank you for that. May the Lord bless all of you. And I look forward to our conversation today very much.
Well, your Christian faith as an Orthodox Jew, it animates me. We in the Jewish community, the evangelical Christian community, are our dear brothers and phenomenal lovers and defenders of Israel. As Secretary of State, you traveled to Judea and Samaria, the first ever Secretary of State. You actually visited the Psagot Winery, which is owned by a very dear friend of mine. We actually had one of our weddings there, and we love Psagot wine. But of course, the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria is where King David was crowned. It was where the tabernacle of Shiloh stood for 369 years. And for you, as America's top diplomat, to help connect the Jewish people with that ancient homeland is something for which we will always be so grateful. I don't think we've ever seen friendship towards the Jewish state coming from an American Secretary of State as we did with you. In fact, we didn't. Let me not, although I lived in England for 11 years, let me not here employ British understatement. We never did see anything like it. And your trips were historic. And in the last few days of the administration also, the way you spoke about Judea and Samaria and the proclamations you made were nothing short of historic. And, I wrote a book called Kosher Jesus, and it was an attempt to serve as a bridge, a theological bridge between our Christian evangelical brothers and sisters and the Jewish community, because I think faith is what really binds us. And the fact that you take the Bible so seriously and see it as something that can animate and inspire, even modern diplomacy is critical, because of course Israel is nothing but the culmination of Jewish dreams and Jewish prophecy for 3,300 years. So, Mr. Secretary, I'm humbled that you've accepted, and we really look forward to seeing you continue inspiring America with the values that animated your time as our Secretary of State. We look forward to seeing you, God willing, returning to positions of great influence in the United States. You have a great fan in me. I was mentioning to you just before the presentation of the award that I was actually present at the Security Summit in Warsaw. And for someone who just about to publish a book called Holocaust Holiday, strange title, but it's about the 100 extermination sites that I took my children to visit in Poland in the summer of 2017, and the devastation it caused to the family, for Holocaust memory. Our 8-year-old daughter, who was born July 3rd, begging us not to celebrate her 9th birthday in Auschwitz. And to go from seeing that kind of devastation to our people, to the security summit where you spoke and Vice President Mike Pence spoke about, Iran wanting to enact a second Holocaust, and the Vice President actually used those words, and the phenomenal speech that you gave. And I remember that you were being challenged at your press conference that I sat in on. I was sitting next to the New York Times reporter, and they were hammering you like, "Aren't you guys overdoing it about Iran's threats?" And you said, you all said, "No, we're not overdoing it at all. The fact that this has been allowed to go on for so long, these genocidal threats against Israel and the Jewish people without a strong response from the United States is unacceptable." So I cannot thank you enough, because one Holocaust was something that our people will never quite get over. And the fact that we're being threatened with a second is just absolutely shocking.
Your comment about my trip to Judea and Samaria, it was controversial. And I suppose I knew that. And on the other hand, I was surprised at the way that the controversy was presented. It was really important that an American Secretary of State go there for scores of reasons, but not because it was controversial, but because it's simply the right thing to do. One of the things that we did, and your point about the Warsaw Gathering, which really laid the foundation for the Abraham Accords, right? It was a place where we had nations, Gulf nations, come together with Israel in Warsaw, in this historic, important place. Warsaw was picked with great intention. My trip, Warsaw, the work that we did to sanction the regime in Iran, they were all based on reality. Not some fantasy about the way we'd like the world to be, but a deep recognition of the threats that are posed and the goodness that comes from our faith, and our obligation to use that as that faith as an animating force to confront those evils. Those were the reasons for the actions that we took. I've watched, frankly, this isn't partisan. I've watched administrations from both political parties sometimes mouth the words, but to not acknowledge the true risks and the real facts. And I think without a deep understanding of how religion drives behavior, and an equal understanding of how we should respond in a way that is appropriate to that, I think we're destined to live in a world that looks very, very different. And the risk of a second Holocaust, the risk of real tragedy befalling people of faith around the world, is something that I'm perfectly happy to have the New York Times give me a hard time about. I am untroubled by that. The mission's too important to allow some organization with its own agenda and its own worldview to push us off the square that we know is the rightful place for America and for Israel.
Well, your time as Secretary of State, I think, was often distinguished by your strong opposition to Iran. And I mentioned, my father was born in Iran. He was born in Isfahan. And of course, there was a mass exodus of the Jewish community. And it was the oldest Jewish community in the world, older even than in Israel. My family has been in Iran since the exile after the First Temple, 2,400 years. And you could see Iranian Americans now, who number in their hundreds of thousands, their deep connection to their country. My father never stopped speaking Persian. He passed away during the coronavirus. I'm saying the Kaddish prayer 3 times a day for him. Never stopped speaking Persian. Never stopped eating khormeh sabzi. And Iran has a beautiful, incredible, spicy cuisine. Never stopped listening to Persian music. And they always spoke of the tragedy that the brutal Khomeini regime came in with such an anti-Semitic agenda, and of course started labeling America the great Satan, and took our embassy hostage, and then of course started labeling Israel the little Satan. And then it got worse with these constant genocidal threats. And what shocked me about the Iran nuclear agreement, and as you said, this isn't partisan because human rights is not partisan, but the 1948 United Nations Anti-Genocide Convention, which expressly forbids any kind of genocidal rhetoric, any kind of genocidal threat. And the United States is a signatory to that treaty, as are 183 nations. And while the JCPOA was being negotiated, they continued to threaten the Jewish state with annihilation, destruction. They said it was a one-bomb state. They said it was a scab on the face of humanity. They said it was a cancer. And this actually violated international law. I never understood it. And I speak not as a Republican or a Democrat or a progressive or a conservative. I don't speak as a Jew or as a non-Jew. I speak as an American. And it was the greatest generation that liberated the camps. One of the people we have in our gala, Mr. Secretary, is an African-American GI who was one of the first to liberate Buchenwald under General Patton's Third Army in April of 1945. And we go from being the greatest generation that liberated these camps and stopped the evil of Hitler to kind of funding a regime that is speaking about slaughtering the Jews all over again, let alone, death to America, death to America. So the moral clarity you provided, I have to tell you how comforting that was for me, because I don't feel that as an American Jew, I have to listen to some government threatening to annihilate my people all over again and then being rewarded with the unfreezing of assets to the tune of $150 billion. I don't feel that I have to go through that again. I didn't do anything wrong to deserve to hear that I'm going to be killed and murdered and slaughtered. We have 3 children who live in Israel. So you have to understand how hearing one of the most powerful men on earth, the Secretary of State of the United States, the Secretary of State of the United States saying, this is never going to fly again. You have to understand what comfort that brought. We felt we had friends. We felt we had supporters. We felt they had people who actually gave a damn about us. And it's so comforting. And that's why we're so grateful.
Well, I'm glad you felt that way because you did. And you do have friends. And you should all know that legion of friends is large. It is broad. And even in places that have not always honored that, their governments have not always honored that. As I traveled the world, I saw people from countries that frankly weren't prepared to stand up to Iran. I saw their people share a central understanding. You talked about human rights. It was so much at the center of what I was trying to do. I created this commission and I asked them to go look at human rights. And I did it in the sense of, I wanted them to go back and look at the American tradition in particular. Every nation has its own history of human rights and how they think about it, and then a national theology, if you will, about how human rights rises up. Our founders in America had that too. And we know the history of Israel. We know it's deeply embedded in Israel's founding. But we went back and looked at it. And you know what I found was there was enormous commonality. I had the chance to go to Indonesia and speak before a group of very dedicated people who are trying to stamp out extremism inside the Islamic faith. And we did a little bit of work on the tradition there inside of Indonesia. They too have an understanding of human dignity. And every leader, all of us with the capacity to exert influence, have a responsibility to talk about this, to speak with deep moral clarity, not to round any corners or any edges, and to focus on the fundamental dignity of each human being in these traditions. And when we do that, good things happen. When we don't reward the kind of behavior that takes place inside of the leadership in the Islamic Republic of Iran, when we call it out for precisely what it is, we create a momentum, a force, a power that is unstoppable. I am confident that people around the world now think about Iran differently than they did when our administration took office. And while the next administration may choose its own tactical plan, I don't believe it's the case that anyone will ever again deny the threat that the Islamic Republic presents to the United States, presents to Israel, presents to Arab nations in the Gulf. And I think the Abraham Accords are an outcome of all that effort, right? That work laid the foundations where Arab nations could once again articulate publicly that hostility and antagonism and threats to Israel aren't the morally right thing to do. They're not the right thing to do for sovereign nations. And once again, are now beginning to, we call it normalization. But the reality is, it's just to recognize the right of Israel as the Jewish homeland and say, we want them to be brothers in love, brothers in faith, brothers in commerce, and brothers in security, all the things that nations do together. I am incredibly proud of that outcome. And I am especially proud of all the work that so many people did to put into that, to allow that outcome to transpire. It was historic in the sense of you now have a warm connectivity between these countries that is incredibly, incredibly powerful.
Well, you reshaped the entire Middle East, and with due respect to former Secretary of State John Kerry, who said that there would never be peace treaties between Israel and the Gulf states until there was peace between Israel and the Palestinians. I think the Abraham Accords shows that, you know, where we can get peace, we take peace, and we don't allow one conflict to define the entire.
Amen.
And one final thing, Mr. Secretary, and I thank you so much for your time, but Hakarat Tov, acknowledgement of goodness, gratitude is, in my opinion, the highest of all Jewish values. We're an organization that promotes Jewish values. I wanted to express one more article of gratitude. Obviously, the central teaching of the Bible, because it's right there in the first chapter of Genesis, is that God creates humankind in his image, which leads to three things: that all human beings are equal, all are of infinite dignity and value, and all have infinite worth. And I wanted to thank you and the Trump administration for what you did in Syria, because Samantha Power is a good friend of mine. I was even there at her confirmation hearings in the Senate when she became President Obama's ambassador to the United Nations. And our friendship largely relied on her being this great moral voice against genocide, especially in her 2002 book, A Problem from Hell. And when Syria came around and she was in office, I would say to her constantly, I went to see her at her office at the American Mission at the UN in New York City. And I said, Samantha, this is the great test. This is the great test. They're slaughtering innocent Arab children. They're using mustard sarin gas against them. And you gotta do something. And I found it astonishing that it was specifically President Trump and his administration who were constantly accused of Islamophobia. When the president saw Arab children foaming at the mouth from poison mustard sarin gas, images that will haunt us, will haunt the world forever, he fired American missiles because those lives would not be taken with impunity. They had value. I had a conversation once, Mr. Secretary, with Elie Wiesel, the great Nobel Peace Laureate, and someone who worked with me fighting the Iran deal in 2015. We did many full-page ads in the New York Times. And I once asked him, about a year or so before he passed away in 2016, I said to him, I used to call him Reb Eliezer. I said, Reb Eliezer, did you want the United States to bomb Auschwitz? He said, of course, we all wanted that. I said, but you would have died. You would have died. He said, but I would have died knowing that there's justice in the world. And when President Trump fired those missiles at Bashar al-Assad for killing Arab children, I know it didn't stop all the slaughter. I know we Americans are weary of a nation building, nation intervention. Not all of our Middle East wars have gone as planned. But it showed all of those Arab Muslim children and families in Damascus, in Aleppo, that there's justice in the world, that the United States cares. And I needed to the most senior diplomat of the administration, I wanted to tell you what that meant. It was historic.
Well, thank you for that. I remember those discussions. It was precisely that what you described, that President Trump understood, and he gave us the courage and an understanding of the moral imperative to do precisely the action that he took that day. To your point, it didn't stop all the slaughter, and it is still tragic what's taking place there. But we demonstrated, I think, to people all across the world that the United States was going to be a continued force for good there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. God bless you. And
God bless you.
I hope that you'll have this award hanging on your wall proudly. I know you've got like 10 billion of them, but give us some pride of place. Okay?
I'll do that.
Thank
you, sir.
God bless you.
Thank you. So long. God bless you.
Here at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, we are so honored and pleased to present to Mr. Robert L. Green the Champion of Inclusion and Diversity Award for his vital contributions towards the thematic areas through his role as President and CEO of the National Association of Investment Companies, the NAIC, an industry association which represents diversely owned private equity firms and hedge funds. Social cohesion, in its essence, stems from social trust. And one of the key areas critical to maintaining this cohesiveness is, of course, economic equality. While there is still so much work to be done regarding economic inequality at a global level, macrocosmically, more communally, microcosmically, Mr. Robert L. Green has contributed tremendously and pivotally toward the fight for economic justice through his previous and current roles, ensuring that an individual's economic access points are not limited by her or his socioeconomic or ethnic background. Robert, I'm so honored to have you with us. I cannot tell you how much your organization means to me, because from the time that I was a rabbi at Oxford University from 1988 to 1999, and a disproportionately large number of our students, men and women, went on to banking and investment and hedge funds. It was all the rage at the time, and private equity. And there was not enough diversity. And it's always stayed with me that the monolithic character that we often saw on Wall Street. So you're combating that is critical. And it raises America as a whole, because America is distinguished, thank God, by being a nation of robust economic achievement. And we want to make sure that everyone participates in that equally. So here at the World Values Network, we are so honored and gratified to both present to you this award and to have you receive the award. And it reads, to Robert L. Greene, the Champion of Inclusion and Diversity Award at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala of the World Values Network, presented on February 18th, 2021, and our Jewish biblical date, the 6th of Adar, 578 once its creation. And Robert, thank you for everything that you do. It's such an honor for us to present this to you, and God bless you. I hope that it will be something that you will cherish.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I'm deeply honored to receive the award. I receive it in the name of the 115 plus members of the National Association of Investment Companies. And I'm deeply honored that you all elected to focus on the relationship between the Jewish and the African American community. I think that it's a most important relationship. I think that it's one that for far too long has been both overlooked and taken for granted. We're all affected by the question Dr. King spoke to, which is interconnectedness. And I recognize that in my own life and in my own journey. African Americans have formed the labor spine of so many important Jewish businesses, from Gottlieb's Bakery in Savannah to what became Lehman Brothers in New Orleans. Jewish supporters were crucial to the initiation and support of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, and so many other civil rights organizations to fight for the notion that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. And we all know that the estimates that 50,000 of the summer students and at least that many lawyers in the civil rights struggle to combat racism in the South came from the Jewish community. And I'm sure that many times over, the community, my community has thanked your community, but I thank your community on behalf of so many who don't have voice, who will never be able to receive a diversity and inclusion award, and who will never be able to stand before you and say thank you. So with that, I really want to tell you how committed I am and how committed my members are. I know one of my members will be speaking tonight, Robert Smith. He's been a gracious leader and has pulled us up by our bootstraps. And in many cases, he provided the boots and the straps. But I want to tell a quick story about the long legacy that the NAIC has of uniting both African Americans and Jewish people. In the early days when the association was founded in 1971, the association was made up of as many members of the Jewish faith as it was African Americans. And there's one gentleman who has become a long stalwart of the association. That's, you may know him, he's a resident of New York. His name is Zindel Zelmanovich. And Zindel Zelmanovich constantly holds us true to the notion that both communities need to learn from each other. Zindel made a fortune selling taxi medallions with a company called Medallion Capital. And he leveraged the same program that African Americans leveraged, the SBIC program. And he taught many African Americans how to raise SBIC capital, how to fight and how to prevail. So tonight is not the first night that our communities have come together. And I know it won't be the last. So I look forward to joining you all and forming a bond that helps to strengthen the ties between our communities and forces America to realize and embrace both of our communities more wholly. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Robert. Very well said, very eloquently said. What I truly respect about your endeavors and your efforts is that so often the fight for racial justice and equality has centered on areas that are not necessarily related to commerce or business, with commerce and business almost seen as an impregnable fortress, that the rich kind of control the levers of investments, the big banks, et cetera, and that not everyone can participate in that kind of wealth creation. And as I said, when I saw so many of my students, many of them had a very strong social conscience when they were students. But then the big banks would come to Oxford and they would do recruiting. And at the time, there was Salomon Brothers, which isn't around anymore, Lehman Brothers, not around anymore, Goldman Sachs. I'd go through the whole list. And I would see so many of my students kind of torn. They'd say, on the one hand, I want to do something very meaningful. I want to go into teaching, or I want to go into communal activism. On the other hand, I'm being offered this like a ton of money to go to this bank. And I used to say to them, I don't understand. Why don't you think you could do both? Why don't you think that you could work for equality specifically in the banking industry so that we could see more and more people of diversity, people of color, people of every economic situation and persuasion being able to have the blessing of being involved in finance. So your organization is a rarity and it's critical, because while I absolutely affirm my belief in capitalism, I equally affirm my belief in a soulful capitalism. And I'm very disheartened when I see soulless capitalism.
Sure.
The hunt for money without heart, without ethics, without equality, without care. So you're actually doing something trailblazing and pioneering. You're bringing this focus on diversity to an area that not a lot of people kind of just criticize. There's a boycott Wall Street, stop Wall Street, et cetera. We should change Wall Street, and that's what you're doing. And I really respect that. So what was the vision for the organization, please?
Yeah, the vision for the organization, when the organization was founded, it was founded in the wakes of the riots of the late 60s around the country. And ironically, it was the Nixon administration, a Republican administration, a conservative administration, that said we need to create an ownership culture in the African American and communities of color. And the only way to have that ownership culture is to provide a source of equity that will allow for participation and will allow for growth. So the early motivation was to take the cities around the United States that were burning as a result of protests and a result of unfairness, not too dissimilar to the protests of this summer, but put people of color in a position to move from being capital to becoming true capitalists.
So it was started in the 90s. That's fascinating that it began with the Nixon administration.
Yep.
Do you see the NAIC receiving broad support and bipartisan support from both Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, progressives, given that it is such a fundamental effort to diversify the capital markets?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've never met anyone that disagreed with the fundamental premise that communities of color should participate actively in the venture capital, the buyout, the hedge fund, and the broader forms of the alternative finance industry. Where the challenge comes in is where the capital should come from. Today, very few of my members are reliant upon the federal government as a source of capital. In effect, they raise money from public pension plans, foundations and endowments, and corporations. And it requires some measure of convincing and evangelizing and an outsized effort to prove to all of those constituents that people of color can be good stewards of capital. And in addition to that, the dollars that they invest will be equally as good for America as if they were invested by someone who was a more traditional looking investment manager.
Well, in this regard, a person who you praised, and let me join the praise, Robert Smith and his incredible achievements in running one of the largest private equity companies in the world is an example and a role model to be followed. But of course, what he's also done, of course, is leverage his success for philanthropy. How do you persuade many of your members to be equally involved philanthropically so that there is a more soulful capitalism in our nation?
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent question. I think in their core, many of them are as philanthropic. If I think of Jose Feliciano made a $20 million, he and his wife, Kwanzaa Jones, made a $20 million contribution to their alma mater, Princeton University. If I think about Frank Baker and Peter Berger at Cirrus Capital, Frank donated $7 million to the University of Chicago. Robert is famous at this point for his extraordinary contribution to the students at Morehouse College. So there is a lot of philanthropy going on, but I think the notion of to whom much is given, much is required, is a pulse that beats throughout all of my members. And there isn't a single member that I could go to that there isn't some incredible story about what they've done to a cause close to them and causes of general good to society. There needs to be more of it, and the stories need to be told. We should be telling equally the stories of their investment success as well as their philanthropic success, because only with the two can we improve the plight of all people in the United States.
I completely agree. I think that the artificial bifurcation of either money on the one hand, seen as ungodly and fundamentally greedy or unethical, versus social activism, seen as a social good and motivated by a spiritual desire for positive change. That kind of false narrative where we divide between the two is what we have to try to obliterate. And that's why we wanted to present this award to you, because you may be involved in the capital markets and private equity and hedge funds, but you're really doing God's work. You're ensuring, we have to see the success of the capital markets. We have to see that people who have dreams and who are industrious and entrepreneurial are given the financial backing to realize their dreams. But we also have to make sure that those opportunities are available and afforded to all. And we wanted to salute you, Robert. And I cannot thank you enough. And on behalf of all of us here at the World Values Network, who really affirm American ideals and American values, which we believe are in turn influenced by time-honored biblical values and universal Jewish values, I want to thank you for making America a more perfect union and making our economy more diverse and affording the opportunities to those who have not had those opportunities. And God bless you for your work.
Thank you. And God bless you all, and continued success to you and your organization in the journey that you're taking to improve our nation.
Here at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, we are honored to present Ms. Patricia Bransford with the Champion of Humanitarian Innovation Award for bridging the digital gap through her role as founder and president of the National Urban Technology Center, Urban Tech, ensuring equal access to technology and digital resources for the most vulnerable communities, in particular youth. In response to the global pandemic, Urban Tech initiated the Parents Care Program, an innovative response aiming to provide a smart classroom in every child's home to ensure that no one is left behind when schools are closed during the pandemic. Throughout her role, Ms. Bransford has established computer centers for low-income residents in 750 locations across the country, serving nearly 2 million youth and adults in developing computer literacy for youth development and job training. While digital technologies have the potential to improve the livelihoods of persons at global level, those without access to digital technologies remain closed off to its benefits, resulting in even further marginalization. Many of the people left behind are women, youth, persons with disabilities, minorities, and those living in extreme poverty. With nearly 320 million students worldwide still affected by COVID-19 related school closures, forcing hundreds of millions of students to rely on virtual learning, Urban Tech's innovative approaches to ensuring vulnerable populations can access key digital learning platforms during the pandemic is an important lesson for all of us to uphold and support. And we are truly grateful to have you with us this evening, Ms. Bransford. Ms. Bransford, here is the lovely award you'll be receiving tonight. And of course, it will be mailed to you to your location. It reads, Ms. Patricia Bransford, Champion of Humanitarian Innovation, the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, the World Values Network, February 18th, 2021, and of course the Hebrew date, which is the 6th of Adar, 5781, which is the current Hebrew year. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Bransford. The floor is yours.
Well, I am delighted to be included in this wonderful day. And I thank you for the award. I am blessed and feel very fortunate to be recognized. For 25 years, I have been interested in leveling the playing field across all races, all religions, and ethnicities. And the reason is that I see a greater value for the nation if we were to take advantage of the value of each individual. So that means that kids today who live in parts of New York, whose education is defined by their zip code, we need to find ways to use technology to make it possible for every young person to get a high level, high quality education. That can be done in the community. That can be done by focusing on parents who today really are not involved so much in the education of their children. Our goal and our plan for parents' care is to focus on the parent while the young person is at home being trained, being connected to his or her education. We think that the parent can really make it possible for remote services to be successful. But we have to train the parent, and we believe we need to compensate them with a small honorarium to provide help in getting equipment, and also to be able to actually spend the time and be remunerated for the time that they spend. We also want to train that parent so the parent feels power, that the parent feels that she or he is equal to the classroom teacher. And for that, we see training those parents in technology so that they now are ready for the high salary jobs in technology that are going to follow the pandemic. We believe that since we've all been conditioned and trained to work in a virtual world, that those industries are going to actually grow exponentially, and they will provide opportunity and jobs for people who have that training. So we want to focus focus on the household with a technology center, very much like the centers that I did all over the world, the 750 centers that I actually put in place and train 2 million people who immediately got jobs. I really feel that here I'm going to look at every household in the community as a high-tech center, like the car in the garage, right? It's got to be effective in helping to train young people, but also to provide job skills in this new industry that will grow exponentially after the pandemic. So as soon as we address this health problem, we will be ready with the right training, with the right investment to grow jobs and value throughout the community. So that's really what my goal is. It's always been to invest in people who then would exponentially grow the value of the community and the ability of each and every person. I call it lifting all boats, the value and the ability of each and every person to make a good living, high paying jobs, be able to support their families, and also to, from generation to generation, grow their wealth.
Solutions are inclusive solutions. So this means everyone needs to be completely involved. It is difficult, and it's difficult conversations. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to be aware of our own approaches and our own challenges coming into situations and trying to cooperate and navigate that space separate from our own personal bias. But it's the way forward, and I think that was a beautiful note to end on. And Ms. Bransford, we really welcome you, and we thank you for your participation in this evening, and thank you for all of the amazing and important work you're doing. And we support you, and we look forward to decreasing this digital gap as soon as ever possible.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Moscow-born piano prodigy Evgeny Kissin began playing piano at the age of 2 and hasn't looked back since. Performing on nearly every continent, he has been showered in accolades for his achievements in music and culture and has received honorary doctorates from multiple universities. The New York Times once called his playing unbeatable and said that at his 2015 concert in Carnegie Hall, they had to add 5 extra rows of stage seating just to accommodate the audience. We are honored to welcome him to the stage tonight as our final performer of the evening. Please welcome Evgeny Kissin.
Dear friends, it's an honor for me to take part in a gala dedicated to the issue of such importance, the African-American Jewish friendship. Our two peoples have probably suffered more than any other peoples in course of the human history, and therefore, I guess nobody can understand the African-American problems and tragedies better than we Jews, and nobody can understand our Jewish problems and tragedies than the African-Americans. Unfortunately, and it's a great shame, the relationships between us have not always been serene. I remember that because I lived in the United States in the first half of 1990s when some disgraceful incidents took place. We have to recognize that and to say clearly and unequivocally, shame on the Jews who allow themselves to be racist. Shame on the African Americans who allow themselves to be anti-Semites. I believe that as peoples who have suffered most in the human history, we should be not just friends, but best friends. We should be particularly sensitive to each other's feelings and behave towards each other according to the old Jewish wisdom, which, on the opinion of one of the great Jewish sages of the past, Rabbi Hillel, contained the essence of the Torah. Do not do to others what you do not want to be done to yourself. On this occasion, I shall play for you 3 preludes by George Gershwin, a man who probably, more than anybody else, personifies, I would even say exemplifies, symbolizes the Jewish African-American friendship. George Gershwin was a composer of Jewish origin who wrote music in the style of jazz, in the style of the African-American folk music. Moreover, Gershwin's great opera Porgy and Bess is about African-Americans. So many heartfelt congratulations, a herzlichen Mazel Tov to all the honorees. And dear friends, let us preserve and develop our friendship. United we stand.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us at the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala, held in honor of Black History Month and celebrating Black Jewish Fellowship. My name is Rabbi Mendy Boteach. I'm the son of Rabbi Shmuley. Key among the values that bind our people is our belief in the power of prayer. We know the direct line we have with God, and we never fail to use it. God always hears our prayers, no matter where we are. But sometimes we need to be in the right place to establish the connection from our end. And for this, we have places of pilgrimage. In particular, the graves of the righteous, where for thousands of years Jews have gone to prostrate themselves in supplication before God Almighty. What you're seeing beside me is a prototype of the World Values Network's latest initiative. In an unprecedented tribute to our heroes and martyrs, Pray Time seeks to give anyone anywhere the opportunity to talk, pray, and commune at key places of pilgrimage across the world. After has agreed to provide live stream technologies and their web portal interface, allowing anybody with the link that we have here to pray live and have their prayers live streamed on site at the most meaningful places we have on earth. What you're seeing on this screen is the resting place of Andrew Goodman, who at just 20 years old gave his life for the sake of civil rights in America. In 1964, Goodman joined Michael Schwerter and James Chaney in the Congress for Racial Equality's Freedom Summer in Mississippi, where he and his colleagues worked to register Black rural voters to vote. On June 21st, 1964, they were arrested and taken to a police station before being murdered, their bodies dumped along the side of a road. We come here today to offer a prayer at the grave of a great man, because that is the legacy great men have left us. The chance to realign our minds and our values in the light that they shone. And so we're going to say a prayer today at the grave of Andrew Goodman, chapter 20 in Psalms. For the choir master, a psalm by David. May the Lord answer you on the day of distress. May the name of God of Jacob fortify you. May he send your help from the sanctuary and support you from Zion. May he remember all your offerings and always accept favorably your sacrifices. May he grant you your heart's desire and fulfill your every counsel. We will rejoice in your deliverance and raise our banners in the name of our God. May the Lord fulfill all your wishes. Now I know that the Lord has delivered his anointed one, answering him from his holy heavens with the mighty saving power of his right hand. Some rely upon chariots and some upon horses, but we rely upon and invoke the name of God, our Lord. They bend and falter, but we rise and stand firm. Lord, deliver us. May the King answer us on the day we call. Thank you, and God bless you. And so we conclude, ladies and gentlemen, the 9th Annual Champions of Jewish Values International Awards Gala. I know that you will remember this evening as warmly as I will, because what we've shown tonight is that even in a time of terrible partisanship and bickering and so much unnecessary conflict, we can rise above strife, and we can be one people under God, indivisible. We can show that love is so much greater than hate. The two communities that we have most highlighted tonight, the friendship, brotherhood, and kinship between the African American and Jewish communities, are not united through a shared history of persecution, but a shared history of spiritual promise, always believing that light will triumph over darkness, that love will rise above hate, that unity will come above a fractured, divisive body politic, and that ultimately we will come together under God to be people who seek to make the world more habitable, more loving, more peaceful, and more blessed. To all of you who've joined us tonight, we at the World Values Network wish you a year of health, happiness, prosperity, and above all else, a sense of true spiritual purpose. Purpose that is fueled by our shared universal values. For even though we have different opinions and different ethnicities and different religions and different ways that we lead our lives, we are all united by the common values that make us God's children. Together as one, we will go forward. Good night, and God bless you. And may God always bless the United States of America.